We're going to provide an overview now of Element 3, Professional Development and Coaching. The school's professional development and coaching system is the primary way high-quality implementation and the continuous improvement of MTSS-R and its major elements is achieved. Before MTSS-R implementation begins, all staff should receive PD and coaching in high-quality implementation. After MTSS-R implementation begins, all staff should receive ongoing PD and coaching as needed to continuously improve MTSS-R implementation. In the MTSS-R checklist, there are 4 sections for PD and coaching. There are general considerations, school-based workshops, job-embedded technical assistance, and classroom-based instructional coaching. So the types of PD and coaching that we're going to review in this overview are school-based workshops, job-embedded technical assistance, and classroom-based instructional coaching. First, let's look at school-based workshops. The purpose of these is to ensure that all school personnel, including leadership, develop the working knowledge necessary to drive improvement efforts in the MTSS-R practices. The workshops should focus on building that solid knowledge base in the science of reading, in MTSS-R implementation, and the high-quality implementation of reading instruction and interventions across all 3 tiers. The training is provided to all relevant staff prior to implementation. Let's talk about job-embedded technical assistance. The purpose is ongoing support of reading instructional staff to plan and deliver high-quality reading instruction and incorporating student and implementation data. So some examples of job-embedded technical assistance include professional learning communities or those grade-level meetings, practice-based learning opportunities, and out-of-classroom practice. Let's look at classroom-based instructional coaching. The purpose is ongoing basis, train and support reading instructional staff in classroom settings to implement high-quality reading instruction and support students to become independent, successful readers. Some examples of classroom-based instructional coaching includes implementation data collection. So just like the graphs that we'll look at in a minute, you want to collect implementation on the quality and fidelity of instruction that's happening. Coaching should include model lessons, side-by-side coaching, or performance feedback. What we need to do is ensure that professional development and coaching is also data-driven. When planning for PD and coaching supports, you should examine those available implementation and student data. Individual level data informed by fidelity of implementation data, grade level data. You should be looking at student performance data as well as the teacher fidelity of implementation data. And then, of course, look at school-wide data, student performance and teacher fidelity of implementation data. So all of those levels should be looked at, as well as remembering to look at student data and implementation data. Let's look at an example of what we mean by looking at that implementation data. So this data was gathered by watching classroom instruction within a school and putting it on a graph to see what were the areas of high implementation and what were the areas of lower implementation. So when we look at this, we can learn that the implementation of signaling procedures, there's the signal cue, the think time, and the signal for student to respond, are lower than the other areas. We can also look at the areas of instruction. So irregular words, sound review, letter name, affix, blending, etc. And we can collect that data. And what can we learn from looking at this? We can see that the blending and the regular word reading are lower than the other areas. What we can do then is use this data to determine additional PD and coaching. So here would be an example. We could do some school-based workshops focused on blending routines and clear signaling procedures. We would have all staff participating, and we might do that, make sure that that's done by December. And then we could plan job-embedded technical assistance, again, focusing on blending routines and clear signaling procedures for all staff members. And this would occur during PLCs. So during January and February, all staff members during their professional learning communities or the grade level teams would work on practicing the blending strategies and the signaling procedures that were taught and reviewed during that school-based workshop. And then finally, we would plan for that classroom-based instructional coaching, again, focusing on blending routines and clear signaling procedures. All staff members would be participating December through February. So coaches would be able to go in, do model lessons, provide feedback, possibly be then collecting implementation data to measure the effectiveness of the PD and coaching. So then we want to make sure that we are going back and looking at that continued collection of implementation data after the PD and coaching to determine were the PD and coaching effective in improving the implementation. And the data shows us that there was a significant improvement in the signaling procedures. The blue represented that implementation data from October, and the red is the data that was collected in January. And then we can see how successful were we with the blending and regular word reading. And again, we can see that there were significant improvements in the implementation in those two areas as well. We can continue this cycle by analyzing data to determine continued PD and coaching to ensure our students are receiving high quality instruction. All right, let's move on to the evaluate and score for element 3. Same thing, you want to make sure that you are looking at each of the element items, having healthy discussions with your teams to determine the rating for each of those items. You can pay attention to the phase indicator, looking particularly at those readiness phases at this point in time. Do you have all those beginning things in place in order to be successful with implementation? And then also recording any discussion notes from your team discussion. All right, we will pause the recording, work with your team, score each section of this element. There are 4 sections. When you finish scoring element 3, come back and we'll move on to element 4.